Good afternoon, Lori.
Good afternoon, Carol. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Welcome to EmpowerHub for November 20th, 2023. This is our second EmpowerHub, and we're really excited to be doing this. So we are live on Facebook, and we're considering putting up a YouTube channel to put these videos up on YouTube as well. So fantastic. Hopefully some other people join us, but Lori and I will continue on the conversation, whether people join us or not. So, Lori, I just want to congratulate you too. We had our very first networking brunch over the weekend, which I thought was a real success.
It was great.
We had it at Molino's, a fairly new restaurant in town, Italian food, Italian-inspired cuisine, and food was delicious.
It was wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, and Ashley, the owner of the restaurant, did a great job, and her chef Dean was phenomenal, and actually even came out to double check with the table, make sure that everybody got what they needed and that they liked it. So it was really good.
No, it was awesome. It was great. Great customer service as well.
Yeah. And we had a couple of new members come out and join us. So for those of you that are wondering, over the winter months, November, December, January, February, we've switched our dinner to a brunch. So we'll see how that goes. If it gets better response than the dinner, we might keep it that way, but it's just a temporary change for now. And as always, we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, and a reminder for anyone that's catching this either live or on the replay that there is no luncheon this week because we've had the brunch on the Saturday, so we're foregoing Thursday dinner at all costs. So
not for November, not for December. So so we've had our two events for the month of November now. So fantastic. Okay, good. So Lori, today I thought that maybe we would talk a little bit about what the identity shifts look like when you're in business. So when we start a business as a solopreneur, like you and I both are, right? Who do we have to be? How do we have to show up? And then how does that change once we have teams, right? And you don't have a team in your current capacity, but I know in the past, you have had people that have supported you, specifically with your dog sledding enterprise, right? So be it clients that came in or people that you hired. And then once those teams are well established and you're able to actually move up as more the visionary of your company, what our job then becomes. So as a solopreneur right now, I feel as though our identity is like we have to look after everything. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and what do you do to get support in that as a solopreneur?
As a solopreneur, it's really the only support, certainly in my life, that I've found, and in this current capacity, the only support I have is my husband, who encourages me. He doesn't understand it, but he encourages me. He doesn't discourage me by any stretch. And then it's the relationships I've developed with other solopreneurs and people who are friends. So my very close friends, I don't have a lot of friends. I have very close friends and I have lots of acquaintances. So my close friends, you and a few others that are in the group and some outside the group, are the support that I have to bang ideas off of and to, okay, geez, I'm running up against this. What do you think? Or how do you think? Other than that, it's the one-woman show. So I'm doing all the learning and all the training that I can do. And then I'm also doing all the creating and the marketing and the sessions and the right? So as a solopreneur, it is such a lonely journey when you're trying to figure it all out. And even though I've been in business in the past, and did, got to that point where I did have staff, and I was still doing an awful lot of work that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to be doing, but it was part of the job because that's what I had to do.
Right. We talked about this weekend at the brunch. We talked about, it gets to the point in time where you either pay with your time, which is what you're doing now,
Yeah.
or you pay with your money. And usually as solopreneurs, we get pushed to that paying with your money once we feel as though we don't have any time left, right? So I know that you actually had a fairly robust business prior to COVID, and like many people, COVID has changed the way we do business, and some businesses lasted through it. Thank God. Some didn't. Yours was one that lasted through it, although it is looking much different on the other end. So as you continue to grow and develop your business, have you put any thought into what would be the next thing that you would pass off either to an employee or potentially a virtual assistant as you started to run out of time? Have you checked those priorities? And do you know what the first thing that you would offboard or offload would be?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I'd offload is all the social media garbage because it takes way too much time and effort. And I get really tired of trying to come up with just trying to do the social media thing because, and I know there are people that thrive doing that. There are virtual assistants that thrive doing that kind of thing. And I would rather, in all honesty, slit my wrist and do it for a full-time job. Right. Because it's just not where I want to be. It's not where my heart is. It's not why I'm doing what I do. I'm doing what I do to help people, not to spend time making Facebook posts and making ads and doing Instagram this and doing Pinterest that. That's not why I got into doing what I'm doing. So that would be the very first thing that I would offload. And of course, that means offloading. It means I got to monitor it like crazy because I'm a bit OCD that way to make sure that it's going the way that I want it to go.
Well, that's just part of the responsibility that we carry as a CEO, right? And if our VA or whoever's doing our social media for us has the proper systems in place, they're going to be presenting you within numbers on a weekly or bi-weekly or whatever canter you arrange in the contract with them, right? So as a CEO, though, I do believe that it is our responsibility to, on occasion, go and double check those numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You have to, because you got to make sure whoever is doing in the instance of social media, that they're actually on point with the message and that they're congruent with that. Because if they're not congruent with what your message is and what you're trying to get out there, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time and a waste of money on everybody's part.
Yeah, totally agree. So to those people that are watching that are potentially solopreneurs, or, maybe your spouse works with you in a very small, limited capacity, I wonder if you would share, either in the messages below, the chat, whatever comes along with this video, what would be the first thing as a solopreneur, if that's where you are, that you would pass off? Because I know some solopreneurs, they're like, accounting. Passing off the accounting.
That's next, but it's small enough now I can deal with it myself.
Right. What kind of, so you've identified some of the things that you would have to monitor and track, if you were to pass off your social media. What would that do for your identity as the owner in the company? What would that do for you other than really getting rid of something you hate?
Well, it would free up my time to do the things, to focus more on the things that I want to do, whether that's doing some more learning or whether that's actually facilitating more sessions or going out and negotiating contracts. That's what it would free up for me. The other thing, the major thing for me is it would release the stress that I'm under trying to figure it all out, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And then, so we're talking briefly here about solopreneurs. So let's just go back in our experience and let's talk to those people that maybe have a few employees, one employee, 5 employees, doesn't matter. what do you think needs to happen in order for these people to be able to feel as though they are no longer, I'll call it the technician, the person doing the day-to-day thing? In your case, maybe a series of hypnotherapists or a series of some sort of therapist. In my thing, a series of business coaches in a corporation. What kind of things do we as CEOs need to have in place in order to allow these teams to basically run on autopilot, right?
Oh, that's a good one. I think ultimately it's making sure that the people that you're hiring actually, and it's going to sound woo to people that aren't necessarily in the healing arts industries. You have to make sure that the energy matches what your product is and what you're trying to do. I mean, that's the most important thing. If you can't match that, there's no point. Like if you are like one of those people, for instance, that is, one of those gung-ho, energetic personal trainers, and you hire somebody like me who's way more laid back and way more quiet, that's not necessarily going to be a good match, right? So you have to make sure that people that you're hiring match your energy. They also have to match your passion. Maybe not at the level that you're at, but they still have to have passion for what it is that you're doing. And so that it becomes, they can take ownership of that then, right? They can take a pride in the job that they're doing. You have to make sure that they get the appropriate training for what it is that they're doing, and make sure that they totally understand all aspects of whatever that piece is that they've been hired for.
Yeah. So what you would call energy, oh, excuse me. It's getting dark already. It's making me
I know it sucks.
What you would call energy, I would refer to potentially as company culture, right? So really understanding how you as a solopreneur, and then as you grow, and as an extension of yourself, how your company wants to show up to any given situation. So really the culture value piece, I think, is what you're talking about. And as we start to identify, your words, the energy of the business, we want to make sure that we hire people, exactly to your point, that match that energy. Do they have to be like us? No. And as a matter of fact, I would probably even encourage you to hire someone that is as different from yourself as possible. Because especially in a small business, different perspectives are highly valued, right? And to your point, you said that you had some good friends that you go to for feedback. Well, now as you start to bring on employees, especially, kind of 1 to 3, 1 to 4 employees, you can look at it more as an opportunity for the group to grow the business, and with the CEO as the lead, making the final decisions, of course. But as we're growing as a group and getting our participation from those people that we have hired that match our energy, match our culture, match our vision, they also end up getting buy-in, right? Again, another energy point. And when you have buy-in, these people now feel as though they are working for a movement. They are working for a purpose, right? And whether you're an electrician or a hypnotherapist, you want your people to know the value of the service that you provide, and be able to totally have confidence in that.
Absolutely. And the critical point to that is, other than the training, is the communication. Your communication has to be clear, because you can say something and assume that they get it, but until you actually communicate it in a language that they can understand, or in terms of the physical pieces of the job, that they understand the reasoning why. Like, it's not just you're telling them you need to do this. You need to explain why they're doing it this way, right? Well, and maybe they have a better idea, a better way of doing it. But if they've never done that particular position, or in my case, in the dog sledding world, never even seen a dog sled before, well, honey, you're not touching the one until you understand all the pieces of it, right? Yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you have to be really clear with the communication, because lives are on the line in those kinds of instances. And in a lot of jobs it is, right? Because some of them are quite physical. You have to be able to understand everything around it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
don't have any water.
Yeah. And to your point, you mentioned, and I forget the exact words that you use. We also, as CEOs, shifting identity, leading a larger company, from solopreneur to
Mhm.
small business, right? We also have to understand that as we're teaching our teams and our crews, some of the very important pieces that you're talking about. I think it's also important for us to understand that, first of all, there's the four main different personality types, but there's also the four main ways that people learn.
Mhm.
And making sure that as you're training, as you develop your training, we quite often start a training development program, teaching in the way that we ourselves learn. So
Mhm.
if we learn visually, we will develop a training program or go through, our points in training from the point of view of a person who learns visually,
Mhm.
right? The problem is someone like me comes along and I learn kinesthetically,
Yeah, me too.
right? I learn by touching, by feeling, by doing, and
Mhm.
then allowing that to translate into my brain going, okay, how efficiently can I do this?
Mhm.
What's the maximum amount that I can do in the least amount of time in
Mhm.
order to get the net result?
Yeah.
That's the way I'm
Mhm.
wired, right? So an identity shift for a CEO from a solopreneur to a small business is now that you're part of a team.
Mhm.
And as part of that team, yes, you are ultimately the leader,
Mhm.
and let's make sure that we touch on some of the leadership pieces, but you are also working with your current team to congruently develop these culture value pieces,
Mhm.
how we're teaching our crews, our teams,
Mhm.
right? And I think there's a lot of small businesses out there, they want to get ahead of where they are.
Mhm.
And the way I see it is, if we have this opportunity in front of us to really understand and learn how to teach our team
Mhm.
what this next piece is, I actually think it's our responsibility to slow down a little bit, to
Mhm.
slow down, to make sure that in our overall training process or production process, whatever it is that we're working on specifically, that piece is now step by step,
Mhm.
blocked out, right?
Yeah.
Creating a standard operating procedure is
Yeah.
what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So, no, so again, not only are you leading the team, but you're delegating. Okay, team, now that I've taught you this, I want you to do a standard operating procedure.
Mhm.
Write it up. What I taught you, write it up, and
Mhm.
then give that to each other and test it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a great idea, actually. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, communication, you have to be able to collaborate, and especially when you're a small business, when you're doing that transition, you have to be able to be open to hearing what your employees are saying. So if
Mm-hmm.
something's not working for them, or some process that you're doing isn't working for them, you need to try to figure out why. And so it's not a criticism of you or your processes, but there's a fundamental leak somewhere that you have to find the answer for. And you can't do that by I know all, because I'm, Eureka, I'm the boss. You have to actually sit and listen to it from the other, as you pointed out earlier, perspective, to make sure that what you're trying to do, or the shifts or changes or training or whatever that piece is that you're working on, actually makes sense moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's the best it can be moving forward, whatever that piece might be. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does make sense. And here's the thing: I think a lot of CEOs, they think it's a one and done thing,
Mhm.
right? And it's not. It's
No.
not, because it doesn't matter what pillar in your business you're looking at. We can only develop to the maximum extent of where we are.
Mhm.
potentially a little bit farther, but not far enough that it's significant. And as a matter of fact, as a business coach, I encourage you not to.
Mhm.
Try to not supersede or exceed where you are currently. Because what happens, and I talk about this all the time, we have all our pillars in our business. Some
Mhm.
people say we have 12. I work with 8. Other companies work with 6, right? You have all
Yeah.
these pillars. And as you're improving your systems and your operations and your hiring protocols and whatever you're improving, right? We're everything's about like this. When we improve it, what happens is it now puts pressure on another pillar. Because
Mhm.
as we improve one and it's working better, say it's your sales intake, right? You improve your marketing, you improve your sales intake, right? And now that starts to put pressure on your ability to deliver your program, right?
Mhm.
To sell your program. So
Yeah.
that the next thing that happens is now you have to take your, that delivery process and elevate it. And then that's
Mhm.
going to put pressure on, well, how do you get your contract signed? Right.
Mhm.
And it's going to have to be elevated. And then how do you actually deliver it? Well, I made a promise to this person that they're going to get my program. And I added one thing. How are you going to deliver that? Right. So we're constantly doing this. So if you take one of your pillars and you shoot it up here, you're absolutely going to crash and
Mhm.
collapse another section of your business.
Yeah.
And I promise you, it's going to cost you a ton of time, probably a year to
Mhm.
fix it, and a ton of money.
Yeah.
So just making sure that we're in constant evolution. And this is where like your 1 year goal really comes in handy. And this is where your 3 to 5 year vision really comes in handy. Is you can start to adjust these pillars based on what the next logical sequence of events should be,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, so not only are you leading the business, but then within that, whatever section it is that you're fixing or improving, let's
Mhm.
say, making sure that within that we have done everything we can do to bring it to where we need it to be without crashing
Mhm.
the rest of the business.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit of a balancing act. So as a solopreneur, we're the ones that do everything,
Yeah.
right? As the head of a small business, we become the team member.
Mhm.
Let's talk about leadership in there.
Yeah.
So we're starting to develop some leadership skills, right? What were some of the leadership skills you developed with your kennel?
Oh, there were so many points. When I was hiring staff and bringing people on board, most of them didn't have any idea. They were young kids, had no idea. Some of them didn't even know how to tell the difference between a boy dog and a girl dog, in all honesty. So it's that basic, but everybody loves the idea because, like, wow, this is so cool, this is so different. But the transition and trying to find ways to go from the teacher mode, and all of it was hands-on, because you have to be hands-on. It's not something you can learn in a book. It's all hands-on in that industry and in those cases. So starting with basic, this is how you feed a dog, this is how you water the dog, this is how you groom the dogs, this is how you hook them up, this is, like, all of that kind of thing, and interspersed in all of that was all the safety pieces that had to happen. So I had to take these kids that were mostly city kids and teach them how to clear a trail, how to make a trail, how to be aware of what is around you. As we were talking on Saturday with one of the participants about having to be aware of everything that's around you, because everything out there is going to kill you when you're out in the snow, right? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can freeze to death, you can get tromped by a moose, you can get attacked by wolves or bears or whatever, right? So you've got all of that stuff you have to teach and show. So that was the beginning pieces. And it's all stuff that I knew just over years of bumping my head against the wall and just bumping along. And my growing up, my formative years living rurally. I had to learn all that stuff. So how do you translate that out? So you have to sit down and really think hard when you're making a transition, and you're hiring staff. You have to make sure that all of the stuff you have here is easily relatable to someone that's sitting across from you that has no idea. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I mean, that's part of the process.
Yeah, so what you're talking about and the way I'm taking it is, from bricklayer to architect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from someone that knows the technical pieces to now being the person that teaches those technical pieces and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that all the technical pieces happen in the order that makes sense
Yeah.
and that is efficient, and in your case really supported the dogs. Like at one point in time you had 120 dogs. I
Yeah.
mean, like, you weren't a small kennel, right?
Yeah.
So so even the systemization of the process to make sure that every dog didn't miss a meal, to
Yeah.
make sure that every dog had fresh water, to
Yeah.
make sure that every dog had, their vaccinations or their health checkup or however
Mm-hmm.
however you did that, right?
Yeah.
So really, again, I take it from bricklayer to architect. This is what we do. This is the system in which we do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I also see it as, I don't want to say problem solver. That's not quite the right word, but we have these tasks ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
How do we set the agenda,
Yeah.
right? How do
Yeah.
we plan? How do we plan? So now that you guys have been trained on how to
Mm-hmm.
do this in a way that, we make sure that none of the dogs go hungry,
Yeah.
how do we set the agenda
Yeah.
so that this happens on repeat?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was years of practice for me to get there. I mean, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
start with 120 dogs. I started with 18.
Sure,
And
sure.
slowly, well, I did. I started with 2 and then it just built from there. But it got down to military precision. So in off season, when I didn't have any staff members there, I could feed, literally dish up, load up, go to the kennel, chain every dog up, and drop food and water and pick up the dishes. And as you're picking up the dishes, you're scooping the kennel. I had it down to 3 hours on my
Wow,
own. So
wow.
it was military precision, and that's bringing all the dishes back up to the house, washing them and drying them and putting them away. So when you had staff, we had it down to an hour, twice a
And
day.
that'd be twice a day.
Twice a day. So in that, you're hands-on with the animals all the time, and then that's not even counting training pieces. So yeah, I had to develop that process to make sure that it was efficient, because honestly, I'm not paying somebody to stand around twiddling their thumbs trying to figure out how to do it. This is how it gets done. And initially there was a lot of pushback. Well, and I'm like, no, do it this way. And there's a
Right.
reason why, right? And then it got to the point where it's like, man, this is clockwork. And so I would have other professionals come and look at this and go, holy cow, how did you figure this out?
Mm-hmm.
It's called living with them. It's called working with them. It's called, it's just being present in the moment doing it.
Well, and we actually talked about this a little bit on
Saturday.
Saturday. It's starting now to understand the patterns in your business too, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing the patterns, and instead of fighting them, just like, okay, this is what's naturally and effortlessly happening.
Yeah.
So if it's good for the business, if it's good for the dogs, if it's good for the staff or the employees, or the volunteers or whatever you have, how do we make this now a regular part? And discerning what pieces of those patterns are actually good for your company and what pieces are not.
Mm-hmm.
Some really great examples. Thank you for that.
Oh, I have many.
Well, and to your broader point, again, just recognizing what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, as a solopreneur, doing it ourselves, as an entrepreneur, starting to delegate those tasks to be done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's when we set up the job description, and your job description is
Mm-hmm.
feeding and shoveling kennels for an hour a day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hard work. The rest of it was all fun, right? But it's still work. And in the instance of using the kennel and the dog sledding touring thing. So once the staff was trained up, and we would start training in September, so that all the groundwork was done with the dogs, all the groundwork was done with the staff, so that once we hit snow, I could just let them go. It's like, okay, you're taking these teams out today. This is the trail you're going to use. This is what I want you to work on with the teams. Have at her. And that freed me up so much so that I could do all the marketing, because I did all the marketing myself. And that is in the dark ages of dial-up internet. So you guys whine and snivel of what we got now. No, trust me, when you're trying to do, big ads like National Geographic ads and those big travel brochures and all that kind of stuff was painful because you had so much lag time to get it out there. So then, delegating from that, now they're taking the dogs out in training. And so that freed me up for all this stuff. Once we started having clients coming and staying at the property, because they stayed, it was like anywhere from a 2-day to a 10-day retreat. And so it was now I'm operating the B&B. So now the staff is gone. So now my stuff has shifted from my 2 hours a day doing office work to now I'm cooking all the meals, I'm doing all the housework, I'm doing all the cleaning, I'm doing all the rest of it, and being the hostess to whoever was still there. And then the teams come back in and you're getting everybody, sorted out and put away, and then, continue on. So it freed me up for a whole bunch of other stuff. And then the staff members, as things, as they got more confident with stuff, I wasn't doing it all by myself. It got to be a competition on who got to cook. Because I had a young couple that were brilliant. And to this day, I adore them because they were amazing workers. And it got to the point where she was a vegetarian. So now I've got to try and create. So then it became the game of, who's doing the veg meal tonight? So it got to be a game, and it was enjoyable, and it was family. And it was, all of our clients were very, very involved in what was going on daily as well. So it just morphed, and the more you did it, the better it got.
I love that you brought this story up. I love this because what you're really showing to people, and through your own experience, is the opportunity that you have now that you've got this technician piece delegated, right? Everybody is now taking the dogs, they're taking the people, and they're out doing the excursions for you. And as the CEO, it allowed you the opportunity to imagineer and envision what needed to happen next. Yeah. What comes naturally to this business. And I'm not sure that when you first got your 18 dogs, that you would be thinking that you were going to be running 120 dogs, 8 movie productions, however many people through every year, plus an Airbnb, at this ranch out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, right? No idea. Really, it wasn't even a glimmer.
So really being open to the open and realistic to the opportunities that naturally and effortlessly came to you. Love that. Love that. And again, the identity shift now again is going, as the solopreneur, you were the visionary, you were the tactician, you were everything. Now you brought the employees on, you were able to train the employees in the tactical pieces, which allowed you to envision, we can Airbnb, we can, share cooking meals, we can do all this. Back to the tactician, how do we do this? How do we practically, place the ads, put up a cooking schedule, whatever, right? Once that was in place, we move it over here, and it now allowed you back to that Imagineering, that visionary piece in your business. Yeah. Now, I know that you had to close that business because you ended up getting sick. If there was a next layer, would you share that with us?
From that perspective, if I hadn't had to close down, it would have just been building cabins and getting the staff, like having staff year round, so that we could build cabins, we could expand and grow much more of our own produce, and expand into other 4-season stuff, hunters, hikers. We did do weddings. We had people come out in the middle of winter, and their weddings were done on dog sleds. So it was endless that way. Expansion into doing more film. because that was always and always is a possibility. Just fine tuning what we were doing and expanding the experience so that it was a 4-season experience, not just a 1-season experience. Which, in the Cariboo in the last 10, 15 years, the snow load, when I started doing the tours as a business, we could start running in snow in the beginning of November. And when we finally closed down, when we closed and we moved, I was lucky if it was the middle of December to the middle of February. I mean, there was the year that we did the movie Snow Buddies. I had tours booked up until March, and I had to cancel them because we had no snow. We were running on ice and dirt like we've got right now, and it's like that's so dangerous for clients and so dangerous for the animals. So I had to cut my season short. And literally we started the 18th of December was our first tour, and we didn't have snow until the 15th of December. And then the capricious nature of nature.
Right. So the value would have been that you would have expanded the business into a year-round operation, maybe running the dog sleds on wheels instead of skis,
Oh yeah.
Bring in your equine therapy. I mean, tons of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So what I'd like people to take away from this conversation is the need for us as owners to go from the problem solvers, the authority in that problem, and the driver of the solution to that problem, right? Through training, through cross-training, through writing SOPs, through even buy-in from your employees. And as we get that, how we can transition into the results focused and then the performance leader, right? Because as our business gets to a certain scale, and maybe that's it, like you really don't have any other plans. Not that you wouldn't say no, not that you would say no to anything. It's just you've achieved your vision. In order to make that business, nothing's perfect, but perfect. Now we have to get down into the finite stuff. Now, as our leadership develops, we now become the performance leader, right? We now become the mentor. We now set as an example the right behaviors and attitudes that reflect our company's core values and model that for our employees and model that for our business. Right? So as the identity shift happens, to me, like a lot of my clients say, well, if I'm not the technician, I don't know what to do. Right? I don't know what my job is. So as we move into the visionary, the imagineering person, the action, like the epitome of what I think many people see, feel, hear, is the CEO. Kind of what is your ultimate goal? What is being the CEO of your own company look like? So it actually kind of, it's a really cool place to be, because instead of now, going to the kennel and having to train this new kid, right? You have people there to train the new kid. So now you can go in, you can talk to the new kid. How's your experience here, new kid? Are you appreciating what you're learning? What, as a mentor, you can ask these really leadership-driven, leadership-focused questions, right? What's your experience here like, right? Has your first however many weeks on the job been a positive experience?
What are you struggling with? What are you struggling with? How can we help you with that?
How can we help you with that? And that, to me, is a beautiful place to be. And when you can now go back around to your employees, not as their direct superior, right? But as someone who is truly there to be able to support the organization and the people within that organization as a whole.
Yeah.
That is what the CEO's job is to be. So I encourage people as they're going through these identity shifts, because we go from CEO back and forth to technician to CEO, and we do it. And there will be a day when you are finally landed in that CEO position.
But it never feels it. It never feels it. You get
right
there, and everyone around you knows that you've done it, but you're like, I don't know.
Well, because you're kind of traumatized, right? It's like, what's going to break next?
Yeah.
But as you realize things aren't breaking, or if they are breaking, somebody else has already got it.
Yeah.
You have your operations manager in place. You have your production manager in place. You have your HR manager in place. You have your accounting manager in place. You have your admin manager in place. Whatever your organization looks like.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're only coming to you for the high level problem. You know, if the bookkeeper can't figure out how to data enter an accounts payable, that is no longer your problem.
That's right. It's the account manager's.
It's the accounting manager's problem, right? So the freedom that this creates, a lot of people sabotage it.
Absolutely.
They sabotage it because they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. Well, sorry. Yeah. And the other piece that I think is really important is when as the CEO, you're able now to delegate to whatever, whoever is in your organization, you have to be able to allow yourself the breathing room and the time and the grace to imagine where you can go next. Like once you're there, right? Where do you go from here? And that becomes a lot of questions. I mean, whether you're retiring, it's like, okay, where do I go from here? Or whether like whatever it is, or your job ends or whatever, it's like, what do I do now? What do I do when I grow up? Well, you have to allow yourself the grace and the time to figure that out as well, and to allow it to happen. Because as you said, when I started out with my 1 or 2 huskies initially, I had no idea that this was going to morph into what
little pet.
Oh yeah, I had one, and then I got another, like potato chips. You can't not have more than one. And then it just morphed out, because then people were like, oh well, I have this dog. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, dumbass me. Take on everyone else's problems and rehab it and fix it, right? But at no point did I know that was going to happen. And when I was in the thick of it and tearing my hair out, when things were really, really crazy and hairy, I had to stop, because I had friends say to me, Lori, take a breath. Like, you're there. Quit worrying about what's going on now, and what do you do next? And I was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do next? I got this and this and this and this and this to do. And I didn't give myself the grace to step back and say, okay, yeah, you know what? You're right. Now I do. It's like, okay, so how can I figure this out now? And where can we go? So always be willing to follow what comes to you. You don't have to plan it all the time. I mean, it's great to have a plan, and it's probably advisable to have a plan of some sort, but allow yourself to be open to the other things that come to you because of what you're doing, and because you're successful at what you're doing.
Well, and I think you and I both know that, yes, we can have a plan. And after 3 years or 5 years, are we going to achieve everything on that plan? No. And thank goodness, because some of the things on the plan didn't bloody well belong there, right? Yeah. Because here's the thing, we're here and we're planning for here. Yeah. And we don't know what this middle holds. So all we can do is create, right? Create the vision, create the plan with what we know now. Yeah. As we grow and learn more, can we adjust that plan? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, it's our responsibility. But I love that you talk about the grace, right? Allow yourself the grace. So many of us are performance driven, right? And if I'm not doing something, then something's falling apart. Well, not necessarily. Yeah. Not necessarily. And when things are flowing and things are going well, making sure that you take that deep breath, go take that holiday, go take that extended long weekend, go give yourself some time. You're going to know the words around this better than I am. But sometimes when you're so in the problem, you can't see the problem, right? You have to step outside of it. You have to go on a holiday. You have to go visit friends and family. You have to go get drunk for a night even, although I don't recommend that. but really change your focus
Mm-hmm.
for a short period of time, and when you come back,
Yeah.
there's going to be a layer of clarity there that wasn't there before.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
You have to make those changes for sure.
So I love that you touched on that grace piece, because that's what it is. Like, allowing yourself an extended long weekend, that's
Mm-hmm.
grace, right? Especially, as entrepreneurs, we're so performance driven, right? Well, I have to, well, I have to, well, I have to. Well, no, actually you don't,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe that
Yeah.
have to, is now your trigger to hire that VA,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that identity shift, really now affords you and allows you that opportunity to come at your entire company from a different perspective. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't care whether you have 800 people or whether you have 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is all the same.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like having children all again, right? Because as a parent, I'm always, like, I love my kids to death, and sometimes I could just punch them in the throat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my first prerogative is always, how can I support you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And holding my fist back, right? But how can I support you? So I love it when I witness this. Just, how can I support you? Quick story.
Mm-hmm.
We had, in the concrete industry, we had this one gentleman working for us. Now, he had some on again, off again drug problems. He was usually pretty reliable,
Mm-hmm.
and but on occasion, I'd say once every 3 to 4 months, he just wouldn't show up, and it was usually on a Friday, right?
Yeah.
And we just like, okay, but he worked for us for probably 3 years, I want to say, maybe 4.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we sold that company back in 2019. We got a phone call earlier this year. So this gentleman, had, he was old. He wasn't old, but I want to say he was 28, 30 at the time,
Mm-hmm.
old enough to know better, right? He had a girlfriend. He had twin daughters, right?
Okay.
And so, when he was good, he was really good. He was always concerned about his daughters and sort of want to get work and stuff. And then every, 3 or 4 months, there would be one day. Okay, fair enough. We got a phone call from him
Mm-hmm.
earlier this year. And he says, Jeff, Carol, he says, I just want you guys to know that I'm doing really, really good. And I give you guys a lot of credit for where I am today,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Can you
So
hang on
here,
just one sec? Sorry.
sure. I hear the husband in the background.
Go ahead, have your conversation.
Oh, she's closing the door. I love it. Well, I'm not quite sure what happened. So anyways, I'll continue the story.
Sorry.
That's okay. So, now it's 8 years later or 9 years later, right? My husband hasn't changed his cell phone number, so he's got a new lady in his life. He has a brand new 1-year-old baby girl. And he says, Jeff, he says, I finally, I got away from that relationship. That relationship was the one that kind of kept him tied to that other world. He says, I'm out of that relationship. I've got stable work now. I've got a stable new lady in my life. We have a 1-year-old baby daughter who's just gorgeous. At 40 years old, I've got my very first credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And for a guy like that, who knew everything at 28, shit didn't stink, right? To actually come back to us 8 years later and say, I am at a point in my life now because of the kindness, compassion, and respect you showed me then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That is true leadership,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It's an example of true
Mhm.
leadership. We always just tried to encourage him,
Mhm.
mentor him, and support him. As a matter of fact, he actually even ended up staying with us for a couple of weeks because he didn't have a place to stay. Right? So he slept on our couch.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't
It's
know
all
if you
good.
can hear that or not. I'm sorry.
We can hear a few things. It's all good. But as a leader in my business, he was not only my employee, but I almost took him on like like family.
Mhm.
Right? And the more employees you have, the harder that is to do. We had 3 crews going at one time, so four people on a crew. So we had 12 at one time, right? So our businesses were always fairly small, and we didn't want to get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
So the fact that, in hindsight, I was able to actually really be that mentor for
Mhm.
that person that affected their life in a long-term way.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Mhm.
Holy shit. The other kind of North Star, as we shift and grow as CEOs in our business, the other North Star that's really important to understand is, what is the purpose of your business?
Mhm.
Like, I had a concrete business. The purpose of, you could say, oh, well, the purpose of your business was concrete. Well, yeah, sure, it was. But within that, getting back to the culture value piece, it was also important for me to work for people who weren't assholes, weren't peons, would respect my work, would respect me, especially as a woman in the concrete industry. Oh man, I could tell you stories. Carol can curse like a sailor. And I used it as a masculine force. I used that ability in very specific ways. I was very conscious of, me being a female in a male-dominated industry. I forget where I was kind of going with this, but that's how I wanted to show up in my business, right? Like, my North Star was to be able to serve people and provide them our tagline: product, service, reputation, concrete to the core, right? That's how I wanted to show up in my business, right? So really, really taking the opportunity to embrace. I didn't hear anything that time. Really taking that opportunity to embrace how you want to show up. I have some clients, and I think this is brilliant. I asked him, I said, what's the purpose of your business? And he said, to make money. I said, okay, expand. He says, I want to make enough money that I can afford to give it away. And I thought, okay, and now we're getting a little deeper. And I said, what do you mean give it away? He says, well, if my daughter wants to go to college, I want to be able to give her the money she needs to go to college. If my aunt has a niece, second brother, twice returned, that needs an apartment, and and I want to be able to afford to give him the $3,000 for, the down payment and the first month's rent, if I want to, right? If I want to give to a local charitable organization because, what they're doing really resonates with me. I want to make enough money to be able to give it away. And I was like, now that is a fantastic purpose behind your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've touched on a lot of different pieces today, but I think for the most part, we've stayed focused on, some of the challenges in shifting the identity and how often we shift the identity in our total career, right?
Yeah.
And in your case, you know, you've had multiple careers, right? And in my case, I've had multiple careers. We're just of that vintage. We don't need to talk about how old that vintage is, but you know, I kind of look at as an admin assistant pre-career, right? Pre-business, and then running my business for 25 years, and then now as a business coach, right? Definitely had all sorts of different experiences and opportunities to learn, and definitely within that identity shift from the doing to the visionary, or imagineering, from the doing to the imagineering, right? Creating and bringing it into reality, creating and bringing it into reality. So yeah, so hopefully the people that watch this, you know, they realize that they're not, I was going to say cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but doesn't make sense.
Wonder where you heard that term from.
Right? Right. I think I know where but it is a natural progression as we grow and develop our business. And to not feel off center, because that is the way it's going. That is the pattern.
Yeah.
That is the pattern. And just to be really cognizant of it, and taking care of what's in front of you in the moment, building it to a point where you can now make somebody else responsible for it, so that you can take your business to that next level, however that presents itself.
Yeah, and no matter what the business is, right? Because people, even now as a therapist, people question me. It's like, well, how did you get this experience? Well, okay, no, I don't have the paper saying that I've gone through it, but you know what? I've lived it. So I understand it and I know it from that aspect. It's the lived experience. And they say, well, how does that translate over? You worked with dogs. Well, there's a lot of education there, a lot of education in terms of how your business runs. Businesses are businesses are businesses, and they run all the same way. It doesn't matter what it is. So can I take the information and the experience from dog sledding and translate it into a therapy business? Absolutely. Can I take that experience and translate it into a construction business? Absolutely. Can I take that experience and translate it into a logging business? Yes, you can. So, I mean, your lived experience is just as important as your book experience, and sometimes more so. So don't be afraid. And I know for a lot of solopreneurs, right, they're like, oh, I can't do it. And the imposter syndrome thing, which I will have to talk about another time, is it's all valid information and it's all transferable and all on all levels. So you're not something.
Well, I think what you're trying to say is the theory behind running a business is the same. Doesn't matter what business you're in, right? So I did 3.5 years at Douglas College in a business management degree, and I promise you, there is nothing in that degree that I actually apply in business today. So I think the most valuable education is the learned experience. Yeah, absolutely. So fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. It would have been nice to have had some people join in as well, just to get their perspective and their experience. But I think we covered, again, a gamut of brief subjects, but really highlighting the identity shift experience that we go through in the different layers of building a business. So I appreciate your time and energy today, Lori. Yeah, and I appreciate Tom in the background.
Feeding our dogs.
Well, they're hungry too, right? Anyways, you have a great afternoon, and
you too.
And I will talk with you again same time next week.
You bet. Take care. Thanks so much, Carol. Thank you very much. Welcome. And everybody that's joining us, reach out. You have questions, reach out. We're here to help you. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.